Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Goodfriend again with your science lesson for the week. If you remember, last week we started talking about adaptations, and I talked to you about how there are physical adaptations, which we covered last week, and then this week we are going to be covering behavioral adaptations. So before we start that, just a quick reminder, what are adaptations? They are any trait that helps an animal survive. So last week with the physical adaptations, remember, that's what you can see on an animal. So we talked about how some animals have teeth that help them survive. Some have different kinds of ears that help them survive. And then there were those two main categories of physical adaptations. They were camouflage, which meant you were blending in with your surroundings. And then there was mimicry, which meant that you copied a harmless animal so that you would be left alone. Right? So we talked about that monarch butterfly and the viceroy butterfly and how one is actually harmful to animals, but the other one looks like it, mimics it so that it can survive better. So this week, we are going to be talking about behavioral adaptations. So what does that mean? There might be a word in there, behavioral, that you know. Okay. So it's ways an organism behaves, behavioral, or acts to help them survive in their environment. Okay. You know what behaving means. You know that you can behave well. You know that you can misbehave. Okay. So it's the way that an animal, an organism, behaves or acts to help them survive in their environment. And there are four main types of behavioral adaptations. The first one is instinct, then there's learned behavior, hibernation, and migration. So we're going to look at those a little bit more in depth right now as a reminder of what those mean. So instinct, let me move. Okay, is a behavior an animal is born knowing. So there are a few things that humans are born knowing. And if you remember in our needs and wants lesson in social studies, there are a few things that we need to survive. And those are some things that are an instinct. We know we need those to survive. Nobody has to teach us that. So we know we need food to survive. That's an instinct that you need food. Another instinct is needing shelter to survive. So nobody needs to teach you that. You're kind of born knowing that. And animals are the same way. It's a behavior an animal is born knowing. So we're going to look at a few different examples. So one example of an instinct is a moth's instinct is to use moonlight to find its way. So that's why moths are attracted to porch lights. I don't know if you've ever gone outside and seen some moths kind of hovering around your lights and you were wondering why. Well, it's an instinct to them to use moonlight, and to them, your porch lights look a lot like the moon. So they're very attracted to those porch lights because it's an instinct they're born knowing to use moonlight to find its way. Another example is that a mother sea turtle buries her eggs in the sand. Most of the young sea turtles hatch at night. Their instinct is to go towards the brightest area. This instinct helps the hatchlings find the ocean. So when these baby turtles are born, once they're hatched, their instinct is to go towards the ocean because that's the brightest part at night. I don't know if you've ever seen the ocean at night, but you kind of have the moon reflecting off of the ocean, which is much brighter than anything else surrounding it. So those baby sea turtles go directly to the ocean to be able to survive. That's an instinct that they're born knowing. And the last one is that a spider's web helps it survive. The web is sticky, so it traps insects. But how does a spider know how to spin a web? This is an instinctive behavior. So nobody needs to teach a spider how to spin a web. They are born knowing how to do that so it can trap other insects, which they eat, which they need to survive. So again, the spider spinning its web is another instinctive behavior. They do not need to be taught that. It is something that they are born knowing. So I've been saying a lot that they're not being taught. They don't have to learn it. So the next kind of behavioral adaptation we're going to look at is what we call a learned behavior. And I'm sure you can kind of guess based on that word learned in learned behavior, this is not something that animals are born knowing. It's something that they need to learn how to do. So it's behaviors that come from watching other animals or through experience. So they don't necessarily need to be directly taught how to do these, but they can do it by watching or through experience. Okay? Young animals learn how to behave by watching and copying adults. So some examples are bears come to this stream to catch salmon. The bears wait for the fish to swim upstream. This is a learned behavior. So bears do not know that they should go to the stream to catch the salmon or wait upstream for that. Okay? That's something that they are taught or that they learn by watching their parents or other adult animals, and then they are able to copy it and do it. That is not an instinct. They are not born knowing how to do that. They need to learn that. So another example is a chimpanzee isn't born knowing how to use a tool. It learns this behavior by watching others. Sometimes a chimp may figure it out on its own. So again, that tool in the little chimp's hand right here, he's not born knowing how to use that. He needs to watch other chimps to figure that out. Okay? Sometimes you can figure it out on your own, but that's not something that's an instinct. That's not something that these chimps are born knowing how to do. And another example is a mother lion teaches her cubs to hunt. Searching for food is an instinct, like I said, right? You know that you need food when you're born, okay? But knowing how to find and catch food is something cubs learn by copying their parents. So they're aware, they know it's an instinct that they need this food, but they are not born knowing how to find and catch the food. They need to watch their parents and other adult cubs to figure out how to do that, okay? So even as humans, we need to learn how to do certain behaviors, okay? Whether it's by trying it out or somebody teaching us how to do it, it's something we need to learn how to do, something like walking, okay? We're not born knowing how to walk. We need to figure out how to do that. That is a learned behavior, okay? Even something as simple as holding a fork, okay? If you remember as a baby, or if you have a baby brother or sister, they don't use a fork right from the beginning. They use their hands first, and then they learn how to use a fork to be able to eat the food. Okay? Something like holding a pencil. Okay? When you take this pencil, you don't know how to hold it properly. And that's something that you need to learn how to do. Even something like writing. Okay? Your ABCs, all this stuff back in kindergarten that you learned, okay, how to do, is now something that comes very naturally to you, but those were all learned behaviors. Knowing that you wanted food, instinct. So the next learned behavior we're going to talk about, or not learned behavior, sorry, behavioral adaptation, is hibernation. So hibernation means to go into a deep sleep-like state for the winter. I want you to think, do you think hibernation is a learned behavior or an instinct? You said instinct, you are correct. So hibernation is an instinctive behavior, but what hibernation means is to go into a deep sleep-like state for the winter. So what we're going to do now is we're going to watch the brain pop quickly on hibernation together. We're not going to do the quiz or anything like that. That will take too much time. But if you want to do it on your own, go back to brain pop and go ahead and do the quiz, play the games. There's so much for you to do on brain pop. Right now, we're just going to learn about hibernation though.
Moby, what are you doing? Why do you want to gain weight? You're getting ready to hibernate for the winter? Robots don't hibernate. What animals hibernate? Winter is my favorite season. You get to go sledding and drink hot chocolate. But I guess animals don't really go for that stuff. Hey, where are all the animals? I know she looks dead, but she's not. You can tell 'cause she's breathing. The ground squirrel is in hibernation. You know, like a really deep sleep. I can think of lots of animals that hibernate. Bats, turtles, frogs, dormice, and bears. Really? Bears wake up in the winter? So, some scientists say they don't really hibernate? Well, everyone can agree that bears at least sleep a lot in the winter. Why do animals hibernate anyway? It's really cold and snowy, and a lot of plants die or lose all their leaves. It might be hard for animals to find things to eat. There's not many plants around for this hedgehog to eat. But hedgehogs like to eat other things too, like bugs. Come to think of it though, I haven't seen many insects out in the winter. Some bugs burrow into the ground to protect themselves from the winter cold. That's kind of like hibernating. Food can be really hard to find in the winter too. So some animals, like the hedgehog, hibernate to survive the winter. What happens to an animal when it hibernates? It looks like she's breathing really slowly. Maybe everything is slower for her. Even her heartbeat. I guess her body temperature must drop so she can save energy too. Well, I don't know if she dreams about nuts. I wonder if she is hungry. She looks pretty chubby. How do animals get ready to hibernate? Grandpop always packs me a lunch so I won't get hungry later in the afternoon. I bet animals do the same thing when they get ready to hibernate. No, Moby, Grandpop doesn't pack them a lunch. Animals need to store their own food. They eat a lot of food when it's warm and store up fat in their bodies. Then when the animals hibernate, they can live off their fat all winter. You couldn't live off your fat, Moby. Animals can hibernate for months. But why do animals stop hibernating? Spring is my favorite season. Right. Both winter and spring are my favorite seasons. I can have two favorites, right? Hey, look. The ground squirrel used up all of her fat, but she's really smart. She stored nuts in her den so she can feast when she comes out of hibernation. When it's warm, animals start coming out of their winter homes because they know that soon there'll be lots of plants and other food to eat. People even watch animals coming out of hibernation so they can make predictions about the weather. The groundhog saw its shadow. The saying goes, there'll be 6 more weeks of winter. What do you think, Moby? 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 Maybe robots can hibernate.
Okay. So again, right? Animals hibernate to survive. There's not as much food available to them in the winter, so they stock up before the winter time. Okay? They kind of get all big and fat, and then they go into a deep sleep-like state for the winter, and then once it's spring and everything starts to resurface, flowers start to grow, more animals start to come back out, they also start to come back out. So snakes are all hibernating together. Okay, when spring arrives, they'll leave their den. We also have the ground squirrel. Okay, the ground squirrel spent the fall eating and gaining weight. It stored up enough energy to survive winter hibernation. The squirrel's heart rate and breathing have become slower, just like the brain pop said. Everything slows down when animals are hibernating. I can't see the word hibernation. And then we also have bats, like the brain pop said. They hibernate in the winter, and then in the spring, when the weather warms up and there's more food for the bat, it will come out of hibernation. So it's just for those winter months that these animals will hibernate, sleep through them, store up energy, and then once it's springtime again, they will come back out. So the last kind of behavioral adaptation is migration. And migration is to travel from one place to another and then back again. And we are also going to watch the brain pop on migration to learn a little bit more about that. And again, the same thing here. We're not going to do any of the quizzes or play any of the games, but after the lesson, if you want to go back, you can take the easy quiz, the hard quiz, play some of those games. Okay, go ahead to the Brain Pop app in Clever and you'll be able to get there.
Cool. Moby, check it out. The butterflies are migrating. Moby? Good luck at your new home. I hated when my family moved, but I know we had a good reason. My mom's new job. So, what reasons do animals have for migrating? Well, I can't imagine monarch butterflies around here in the winter. They must be like my grandpop. He flies south every winter because the cold bothers his knees. These butterflies must like to go where it's sunny, too. They begin arriving in Mexico in the fall. People expect them during that season, in time for the Dia de los Muertos holiday. Lots of birds fly south for the winter, too. But how do the animals know when it's time to go? They must get clues. Maybe they feel changes in the weather. They also might notice changes in sunlight, especially when the days get shorter. Okay, I know how they figure out when to go, but how do they know where to migrate to? They can't carry maps or compasses. Maybe they have something deep inside that pulls them so they know where to go. Like a magnet. Some animals can feel the earth as a giant magnet. It's a much bigger magnet, Moby. The Arctic tern flies from one end of the Earth's giant magnet to the other, and that's a lot of work. I would be pretty tired if I flew thousands of miles. Yeah, and starving. Why do animals need to store up fat before they migrate? This baby whale has to keep munching if she wants to have enough blubber. She's getting ready to go on her first migration. And she'll use that fatty blubber as energy during her long trip. I don't get it, though. Why'd she want to leave this place? It's pretty sweet. Besides the weather, what makes animals migrate? She sure did love to eat. Maybe she's going where there's a better source of food. Don't worry, Moby. She'll be back. Gray whales are like Arctic terns. They make return migrations. It means they go back and forth to the same place, sometimes year after year. Salmon make one return migration, back to the same river they were born in. They'll even swim up waterfalls so they can have babies in the same spot they were born. Having babies is important, so it's worth migrating long distances to have them. I never knew animals had such big plans. Moby. Some animals do seem to move wherever they feel like it, though. These locusts ate up all the food here. I bet they moved from place to place. wherever they can pig out the most. Locusts are nomads. Nomadic animals just migrate wherever they can find the stuff they need. There's no reason for locusts to return here. Ugh. Moby? You weren't scared of those butterflies, were you, Moby? Well, there won't be any monarchs coming through here for a while. And now it's time to migrate to the lunchroom.
Okay. So, as the Brain Pop said, there are a bunch of different reasons why different animals migrate. As some are to go find warmer weather, some are to go find food. Okay. So, if we look in the winter, when the land freezes over in the Arctic, tundra swans fly to the warmer south. When the weather warms up, the swans return to the Arctic. There they mate and wait for their eggs to hatch. So again, these Arctic tundra swans fly south and then go back home. They don't just stay there. And then we have the gray whales, have one of the longest migration routes of any mammal. They travel up to 21,000 kilometers each year. Those of you and girls on the run, we ran 5 kilometers. Imagine doing 21,000 kilometers each year. Gray whales swim from the cold Arctic to warm Mexico to have their young. So another example of some animals that migrate. So today we talked about 4 different types of behavioral adaptations: instinct, learned behavior, hibernation, and migration. Okay, all how these animals behave, how they act. So for your choice board this week, you're going to have 3 assignments. Okay. One is going to be a behavioral adaptations fill in the blank on Wixie, which I'll show you after I go over all these. Okay. Your next one is going to be to read a book on Epic or Mayan about animal adaptations, and you're going to write down 5 new things that you learned, and I'll show you on Epic and Mayan some of the book options that there are. And then your last one is going to be to go on MobyMax, and just like you did the physical adaptations lesson last week, you're going to do the behavioral adaptations lesson this week. Okay. So let me show you quickly. Okay, again, if you want to do the quizzes for migration or hibernation, go ahead. Okay. It's not required, but you can definitely go ahead and do that if you would like. Okay. So your first choice is going to be on Wixie. Again, under your assignments, you're going to have this assignment. It says drag and drop the words in the box to complete the sentences. So you're going to read the sentences. It says, 1 is behaviors are blank that help animals survive. Remember, what have we been doing this whole time? So when you figure out the word, if you think it's parent, you're going to take the word parent and drag it in to this line right here. Okay, if you don't, well, then leave it right where it is. Okay. Once you have filled in all of the blanks, you can go to File and mark as complete, and your teacher will know that you are done. Okay. The next thing, and again, all of this can be found on Clever. Okay. Again, I have some of mine favorited up at the top. So Wixie is at the top, Mayan's at the top for me. Okay. So when you get into Mayan, you can go to Library and Search. You can search animal adaptations, and a lot of books will come up for you. Okay, the ones that are mostly related to adaptations are these desert animal adaptations, ocean animal adaptations, polar animal adaptations, and rainforest animal adaptations. So maybe pick one of those 4, read it, and see what you learn about how these different animals adapt to their environment, how it helps them survive. Okay, you can do the same thing on Epic. Okay, I already searched animal adaptations. Here's one book that I've been reading, but there's also a lot of the same kind of books as there are on Mayan. What can live in the desert, the mountains, the lake, the forest, the grasslands. Okay, all of these books are about adaptations and how those animals can survive. So in the ocean also. So after you read one of these books, or while you're reading it even better, you can write down the 5 new things that you learn and share them with your teacher. Either write them on a piece of paper, you can type them up in an email, We always love to see what you are learning and what you are reading about. Okay? If you want to do more than 5, go for it. So just a reminder that you can access everything under Clever. And again, in the choice board, it says how to access Clever. If you don't know your login, ask your teacher. Okay? So right here, there's Wixie, there's Mayan, there's MobyMax right there for you. There's Epic right there for you. There's our science textbook if you want to read more about this. Okay? Here's Brain Pop for us if you want to rewatch those videos we watched and take those quizzes, play those games. All of it is right here for you on the Clever app. So I hope that you guys all have a great week. If you have any questions, again, just email your teacher, message them on Dojo, text them, call them, okay, and make sure that you are sending work to them so they can see what you are up to. Okay. Have a great day, guys.